Hello, hello. Hello to everyone today. I just wanted to come on today and just encourage someone. I want to encourage you to remember God's amazing grace. So often when we go through trials in our life and situations occur, we forget about the grace of God, God's grace and His mercy that He gives us each day. I know in my own life, there was a time when I was going through a pretty dry place, should I say, in my life. As they say, going through the desert valley. And at that time, I had went through a series of things in my life and dealing with issues with people who done things to me. And I can remember one day I was at my house and I was thinking about all the things that everyone had done, and I was, just feeling really bad. And I was seeing how could they do this, and I said to myself, "Oh, I can never forgive them. I could never forgive them for that." And as I said that, as soon as I said that to myself, I felt in my spirit, so convicted of how could I say I could never forgive someone for what they have done to me. I may not have liked it now. I don't have to associate with the people, but I had to remember how much I have been forgiven by God, how much grace God has shown me throughout my life. And at that point, I realized I asked God, I said, God, forgive me. Forgive me for even thinking that I cannot forgive an individual. When you have forgiven us for so much, when you have shown us so much grace and so much mercy. So I just want to say to someone that is watching this today, whomever you are, whatever you've gone through, whatever you're going through, remember that God's grace is sufficient. God gives us the grace to go through the most trying times in our life when it seems like we can't make it through, when those who call themselves our friends have turned their backs on us. Because that's where I was. The so called friends that said they were always be there, they were my friends. When I was going through the most trying time in my life, they were nowhere to be found. So I had to rely on God and God's grace and His mercy. It got me through it. And through that, I became a better person because I remember that God's grace is sufficient, not only for me, but for you. We can rely on the mercy of God and His grace each and every day. When we feel like we have been the worst of the worst, remember God's grace is sufficient for you and for me. It's because of God's grace that I am here today. It's because of God's grace that I'm a stronger individual today. It's because of God's grace that I was able to forgive the people who had wronged me and could move on with my life and not look back and have regrets and not have anger and bitterness towards them because of the grace of God. So I just want to say today, as I say, I want to encourage someone. Whatever you're going through, whatever you've been through, remember God's grace. God's grace is sufficient. God's grace is with you, and God's grace can carry you through. Remember, when we feel like we've done the worst of the worst, and we feel like we cannot go to God, always remember that God's grace is sufficient. Whatever situation we find ourselves in, we can stop and we can call on God and we can remember that if we receive His grace, then we can change our lives and know that His grace is sufficient for us all. God bless you. Until next time, peace grace, and mercy.